Welcome to our very special 2-hour, I hope you guys put that on your calendar, Fidelity Maui Connect. So this morning, I'm just gonna go give you guys some house rules. Just a reminder, we're only gonna have the people that have properties on the list pitching. We're not gonna go around the room. And reminder, since we only have half an hour for this portion, time is of the essence. I'm sure you guys know that language. And let's see, gotta think about what's on my list here. So let's go down the list first, and then we will go down our schedule with Jason, then Tiffany, then Pam, then Rita, and then myself.
So please mute, you guys, and then the listing agents can unmute themselves.
Okay, so first up, we have Elena Jones, and I know she just joined us.
Good morning.
Good morning,
Hi, Elena.
Hi there. Thank you. I'll be quick, and I know the video is there, but late last night, I did have a difference in the price point. So you'll see that it has increased from $927 to $967. The property is quick and easy to show. It's available, it's vacant. Beautiful oak wood floors that you can restain, and a lot of sustainability on property with a farm plan. It's a 1-acre CPR property, and it's off of Okana behind Jaws store. And I'm pretty flexible with showing, and so is the caretaker. So the cottage has gone into escrow, so working hard on getting that main house into escrow. But thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing the rest of the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elena, for joining us.
Sure.
Next up, we have Billy and Martin.
Unmute, Billy.
I'm unmuting. Good morning, everybody. Martin and Ridge and I are super excited to present to everybody Kalani Kaihale. Is probably one of the most fantastic homes I've ever been in. 3 beds, 3.5 baths is the main compound, and it's really 3 pods or 3 villas. It includes a 25-yard lap pool. It's got a 10-kilowatt grid-tied PV system, and it is just super, super private. You walk across the street to the beach, you walk to Paia Town, and it is really something else. And we have a pretty fun video on there. We won't run it now because it's 3 minutes, but enjoy the video, everybody. And then it was funny because we showed it the other day, and somebody said, "Is there's more?" And we said, "Oh yeah, there's more." And we took them back to the cottage, which is on its own private acre. And that cottage is 1,020 square feet. It's 2 beds, 3 baths. It has its own swimming pool, a separate office, and it also has its own water meter. So you've got 2 water meters, plus you've got water, a water well for irrigation. This property is fun. It's private, but the thing that's probably the most outstanding is the craftsmanship. And if you've got an engineer or somebody who's incredibly meticulous, this property will amaze them because there are so many details. And we're super excited to bring it to the market. We hope to get people through there soon. Martin, anything to add? Ridge?
Well, all I can add, I'd like to say that, you know, the property, the luxury that the sellers had was time. They spent time on the property, and they really thought every detail through. And the location being in between Kuau and Paia on such a sleepy little entrance and a little drive offers the privacy that one really is looking forward to. It offers the space with the 2 acres. And then, as Billy says, the quality is just second to none. It's just, it blows our mind every time we go on the property. So I encourage you to reach out to us. We'd love to give you a preview. We'd love to show it to your clients as well. So thank you.
Thank you, guys. Next up, we have Liam Ball.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
So to tell you a little bit about 1833A Pi'iholo, which we just got into escrow on, but now we're getting out of escrow on. So it is available. We're contingent escrow canceling. It's very easy to show. The seller's moved out. It's still nicely furnished, so it shows great. I am going to open up the house today. If
From
anybody
Maui.
wants to
So
visit,
tutu's on.
please give me a text. And it's 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, exquisite house, finished about 1.5 years ago. Every detail it's got a laundry room. For a small house, it's got everything you could want. Walk-in closets, separate laundry room, separate sinks, 2 suites separated around a beautiful lanai with ocean views. So I'd love to show it to anybody that's interested. Asking price just lowered to $783. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liam. And just a reminder, you guys, please do use our chat box if you guys have questions, you guys want to share any information about listings, etc., as we are checking, and we are recording this as well. So I know that Robbie is next up, but he's not here. But I did see Jeannie Kong, so I'm not sure if Jeannie is going to announce for him. Jeannie, do you know if you're going to share any information on that? Okay, maybe not then. All right, then we will just continue on with our show. So next up we have, I believe it is, sorry, I don't memorize my
Jason.
Jason. So you are up.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I don't have too much going on right now that I need to update you guys on. The Minatoya loophole bill was the big news that I've been working on for the past, I don't know, months at this point. And that's in a good place. It's going before the county council for its first reading on Friday. The version of the bill that is being voted on is the version that we like, that we worked to get our revisions added to. It preserves property rights while still accomplishing the goal of keeping long-term rentals long-term without stripping anybody of their vested property rights. So this is a real success for RAM and for the county. I mean, this is good for you guys. As far as other good news, one fun piece of legislation that the county is working on is regarding pesticide use and being more thoughtful with the chemicals that we put into the land. I encourage you guys to read up on that and support that. That's a good idea. We should be not using pesticides for our public lands. I mean, we live on an island, limited land. As far as other county activities, I've been talking with Council Member Sugimura and working with her. The council as a whole is deeply concerned about the potential wave of evictions. I'm happy to see that the state is taking action as well to try and keep people in their homes and keep people from suffering, too harsh of a economic fallout from COVID. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about that from Judge Cardoza. Other things that the county is working on, they are putting together a new temporary investigation group for tax reform. So if you guys have some real concerns regarding tax reform or some good ideas, you can either share them with me and I can pass them along because I've been asked for my input, in which case I'm going to take 100% credit for all the good ideas and put your names on any bad ideas. That's just how I operate. That's how I get a good reputation. I just steal everybody else's work. So understand that that's what's going on. But the big priority that RAM is going to be supporting in particular is some sort of tax benefit for landlords who provide affordable rentals. With this housing crisis, it really is a public and a private partnership. Landlords are doing important work by providing housing right now, and if they're providing affordable housing, they should be, getting some sort of benefit or incentive from it. That's just my opinion. If you, next, voting. RAM is working on its recommendations for candidate support. Before those recommendations come out, I want it to be clear. I want you guys to vote for the candidates that you think are best. Any recommendations that RAM provides are purely from the standpoint of this is what the organization believes is good for the organization. These recommendations are based on how RAM would vote if it was a human being. But remember, associations are not people. Our priorities might be different than your personal priorities. And it is more important than ever that our electorate is well informed and out there participating and voting. So if you have not registered to vote already, please register. You can do it online. It takes a very short period of time to register to vote online. You'll get your ballots in the mid-October. I believe the date for those ballots getting sent out for the general election is October 16th. please vote. If you want to have input in RAM's recommendations for candidates, check out Thursday Things Today. There's going to be a link for the survey where the members can verify the GAC's recommendations. Also in Thursday Things, there's a link to a University of Hawaii survey regarding housing. If you are a landlord or a property manager, the University of Hawaii is collecting very important data on the economic impacts in the housing sector and rental housing of COVID-19. And you guys are an integral part of providing that data. So please get involved. And other good news, I'm launching the podcast again, the Ram Gad Pod Season 2. The first episode is going to be out today. I interviewed Asia Iyer yesterday, candidate for county council. And man, she is just a really impressive human being. Even if you don't agree with her politics, that doesn't matter. Listen to this podcast just to learn more about her. She is fascinating. And that's what I got.
Thanks, Jason. And for those of you who don't know Jason Economou, he is our Government Affairs Director for Realtors Association of Maui.
Yes, and I am Judge Cardoza's favorite person that he ever swore in. That's a fact.
And this is
You
being
don't have to
recorded.
verify it. You don't have to verify it, Judge. We'll just take it on my word.
I love that that's being recorded. Okay, next up we have Tiffany Davies with IPX 1031.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you guys for having me. Tiffany Davies, Regional Account Executive from IPX 1031, the nation's most financially secure exchange company out there. So whether your clients are here in the islands or they're in another state, we can assist them. We've been seeing a lot of rush exchanges lately. So as long as closing hasn't occurred, it's not too late. You know, we can make it happen really quickly because we have the ability to have our documents signed via DocuSign. So that's super important. We've also been seeing a lot of reverse exchanges just because of the climate that we're in. So, you know, that's where clients are purchasing first and then taking 180 days to sell. So that's possible, especially if it's all cash, it works beautifully. The IRS has declined to give any more COVID extensions. So that's something that's a big blow we feel to people and taxpayers, but no more COVID extensions are going to apply. We are seeing extensions, 120-day extensions for those that are affected by the fires. So there's a lot of fires burning in California, Iowa, different places. There might be a way that taxpayers that might have a relinquished property or replacement property in an affected area, or if they're affected somehow, they should check with their their CPA on that to see if they can actually get a 120-day extension. And I want to give you 4 things that you can do to always have a successful exchange. So number 1, buy for your clients, buy for equal or greater in value than what was sold. So it's sales price for sales price. Reinvest all of the net proceeds from the relinquished property, replace the value of the debt, and to receive no cash. So that is 4 ways you can always have a successful exchange. And that's all I got. I'm here to be a resource. So call or text, email anytime. Aloha.
Thanks, Tiffany.
And just so you guys, if you guys didn't know, IPX 1031, it is a sister company of Fidelity National Financial. So if you guys need her information, we also have that and we can connect you with her. So next up, we have Pam Teal, our Senior Escrow Officer and Branch Manager for Kahului.
Good morning, everybody. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about one of the new memos that we just got in regarding forbearance. It's coming up because of COVID. It's actually called the CARES Act. It stands for the Corona Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. So basically what is happening now is that the homeowners are reaching out to the lenders and asking for some kind of relief. It can be relief of paying any monthly payments. It can be relief just in a portion of it, whatever they're talking to the lenders about. But it is basically a holding back, and it's a temporary postponement of the mortgage payments. They can postpone to be paid later, and they have different categories of paying. They can add it to a monthly payment. They can wait to the very end when they go to pay off the loan, and then they can add in sequential order of the interest. So basically what we're looking at and what we're going to be watching more closely is the payoff demands that we are getting. So if you are working with some sellers that they're letting you know that they're not making the payments, they've got permission to do so, that means you're going to owe it more in the end. So if you've got a tight, close end from between sales price and what's owed, that could cause a problem at the closing or before. That also, from escrow side of it, was going to cause delays in getting the demands in, because this is the lender now having to look through their accounts and make sure that all the dollars are taken care of and covered before it happens. So just let us know as soon as you know anything. If you're opening escrow, we'll be talking to your sellers. Do not worry about that. We'll make sure that everything is all taken care of when we come to. If we are getting delays and payoffs, we'll let you know as well if it does affect the closing date. And then the other only update I have after that is that the IRS definitely is working from home, as they say. So please know that if you are out there trying to get any kind of response from the IRS, it's going to take a very long time. So we hope that we don't have many of those coming up, but if they do, we'll want to tackle them as soon as possible. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you, Pam. Can you guys hear me a little better? I'm just wondering.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful.
Yep.
You're up next, Rita. Okay, so with 7 minutes to go, Merce and I are going to wrap this up. I'm going to share the screen, and we realize that some of you are looking at these this information for the first time, so I'll try and slow it down. What we've been doing is looking at the real estate market since March or since January 2019. The pending graph, the pending is green and the sold is blue. I'm first showing you from January to the month of August. Of course, we know the second week of March is when COVID happened. So in real estate, we saw a huge drop. We had 27% cancellations in the state of Hawaii at Fidelity. But since then, you'll notice this U recovery, and we're gonna keep willing it to be a U recovery. August, so that you know, we put in more properties in escrow, and we sold more properties in escrow versus last year for the first time since March. So that's really encouraging. Next up, I want to, just a review here. You'll notice back in March, the way that it worked on the island, we had 59% of the deals that recorded were condos. In July, it dropped to 54% in the last 4 or 5 months. So for the first 9 days of the month, this might look a little scary, but it shouldn't, because we've already put in 103 pendings compared to 221 last year. We have recorded 80 deals versus 253, and that's 9 days with Labor Day in between. We do know that that will increase, and we do feel the big shift in the market. We're continuously busy. What I really want to point out is this, is back in March, what's happened in the market, because that's probably the #1 question that we get asked all the time. Well, what's happening in the market is the fact that we were recording 59% of the deals were condo deals. In 6 months, it has dropped 6% to 53%. And that's pretty substantial, because we're talking about 1,500 transactions. So that's about 88 deals. So what's moving are homes. So just quickly, I just want to wrap up. We just did our statistics. So this is statistics. This is year to date through August, and this is a comparison versus last year. What I want to point out to you guys again is this: the number of homes are now 41% and condos are 53%. So we're really seeing a big shift gap, a difference in that. We are of course down in the number of sales. So we're 20% of the market, we're down for the number of units recorded and the total dollar volume, 13%. I want to just point out a couple of things. We know that residential sales, we know that condo sales are down, home sales are down 11%, while the median price is up. We know that condo sales are down big 24%, down with the median sales percent up 10%. But I want to point this out to you guys on the market, because so many of you just work strictly districts. What's interesting is that here in Central, even though home sales are down, Central, they have no change versus last year. So any under $1 million home listing that you have, they're really selling. The places that are most affected, West Maui home sales down 40%, and that's the area of Kapalua and Lahaina. South Maui for condos, South Maui's gotten a big hit, 36% down. But what's interesting, the biggest hit, Kihei condos and Wailea condos. But I do want to point out the area that has not been hit is Ma'alaya. So they have 10 more recorded transactions versus last year. So Mercy and I have these, the 8-page statistics on our personal app. For those of you who are joining us for the first time and would like a copy of this, simply email us at fidelitymaui@gmail.com and we will be happy to send that to you. Mercy, you're up.
All right, you guys, so I'm gonna share my screen real quickly, and if you see my desktop, excuse all the mess. So, let's see here. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
All right, so you guys, couple of things this morning, just a quick tech tip. So if you guys joined us on Tuesday, you guys already know the tech tip, but today's one is how to shorten a URL. So we use tiny URL, but there's many different ones. If you guys want to see the different ones, I do have a link that does show that. And the reason why we're showing this to you is what is a URL shortener. First of all, if you have one of those long URL like this, you can simply cut this short. I'm just going to show you guys as I'm talking. You can copy and then paste that into a tiny URL. Oops. You know. And then make it shorter. Oops, sorry. And then you can customize this. You can call it demo 2. And then all of a sudden, oh, I think I did this already. Sorry, I gotta find another one. This is my last demo, so it's telling me I already have this. But that's, anyways, if it will create a shorter one, you can customize it or brand it to yourself, to your property address or whatever. And here are the reasons why you want to shorten your URL. One, sometimes a long URL, it does look suspicious. A custom URL shortened, you can brand your link. So you can name it the property address or, you know, Fidelity, choose Fidelity or whatever it is. Link shorteners allow you to track your performance. And also sometimes on social media, say your Instagram bio, it only will allow you so much character. So when you shorten it, you are able to copy and paste that link into your bio and have more information on there. And again, shorter links are way more memorable. So every week we've been creating tech tips. So this was this week's one, how to shorten a URL. And we do have this on our personal apps as well. So you guys have the PDF. Last week's one was how to create a friends list and why on your Facebook. And so just wanted to share that with you. And then real quickly, you guys, we've been having agents ask us, how are we doing compared to all the other islands? So we created, sorry, there's all these pop-ups popping right now on my screen. Statewide, I'm gonna admit, 2 more people here. We created a statewide stat so that you guys can see how we compare with the other islands. Is my screen stuck? Okay, so this is August, you guys. I just updated this last night. So here you can see year to date for residential. I'm not gonna go into detail, just wanna show you guys real quickly. Oahu versus, Maui versus all the other islands. As you can see for residential, Kauai took the biggest hit in residential. And then for condos, it looks like Big Island and Maui took the biggest hit. And then we created it separately for each island. So we have Maui County, and I didn't finish up all the other islands, so I only did the Maui County. But here you guys can see we year to date as of August, the number of sales, we took almost a 14% drop in residential, and in condo 24%, which is up from last month. So that's a little bit of a good news. And then we did break this up month to month. So here in residential, we're doing just as well as we did last year. And then condos, we are actually getting back up there. As you can see, as Rita mentioned earlier, we are seeing the U recovery. So that's great news. So again, as Rita mentioned, all this is on our app. Well, this is not yet because I'm not done, but we do have all other stats on our apps. So thank you guys for.
Okay, we did it at 9:31. Okay, so this next portion, you guys, first I want to ask Dan O'Mara, who's one of our speakers, can you hear us and can you speak into your microphone? Merce, if you can put in the chat box the phone numbers to call in because he's having some mic issues. You guys, thank you for joining us. So this next portion is an hour and a half. We want to just ask you to keep yourselves muted, but we are going to invite you to use the chat box, please, because we want to answer any and all of your questions. We are so excited to have the Honorable Judge Joe Cardoza. He's the Chief Judge, Second Circuit Court, Hawaii State Judiciary, who will be our moderator today, and I'll be piggybacking with the questions. We then have David Chee. I think David just came on. Thank you for coming, David. He's the evictions attorney, specializing in that. We have Tracey S.Wiltgen, who's the executive director for the Mediation Center. Thank you, Tracey, for joining us. Dan O'Mara, you're on mute, Dan. Did you try unmuting yourself? Merce, can you try and unmute him? And then just put in the chat.
I'm gonna try find him on the screen. So let me let me unmute him when I get there.
And then we will put the phone number, Dan, in there that you can call in. We have Jillian Okamoto. She should be on for the Catholic Charities of Hawaii, where the funding is. Mula Mula. And
Jillian
then Lori
just signed in.
Tsuhako, and excuse me, Lori, if I said your name incorrectly. She's Department of Housing, Maui County, because so many of us don't know there's funding available through Maui County. And so with that, first we want to thank you guys. Please put all your questions in the chat box. We will be piggybacking and asking those questions in between speakers. So with that, Judge, you are up. Thank you for joining us. You gonna unmute? There you go.
All right, thank you, and aloha everyone. It's a privilege to be here today with all of you. Our topic today deals with the impact of the coronavirus pandemic on residential rentals,
Judge, can you hear him?
Evictions, and rental assistance programs. We won't be discussing commercial leases. We did have a presentation roughly a week ago on commercial leases. We won't be doing that today. Yeah. I can hear you, yes.
Can you all please mute? Can you please mute yourselves first off? Judge, can you try again?
Rita, are we on or?
You know what? We're having difficulty. And Merce, if you can put the phone number that Dan and Judge would be able to call in.
Right now, I'm not hearing anyone.
I just sent to Dan. Let me send to the judge.
Can hear me?
You can put it in the chat box. Well, with that, with all the COVID and perhaps you can go in and out, Judge, into.
Should I mute myself?
You may want to leave and then come back in.
I'm unmuted. Are you able to hear?
No, I would, Judge, I would actually leave and then come back in. Is that possible to have Everett help you? And if you have a headset, that might be helpful. Thank you, Brett. With that, I actually am going to turn it to David Chee, who's our evictions attorney. David, I would just love for you to maybe piggyback, because this is probably the third go around that we've had with you. If you can just share what you're seeing, and then once Judge comes back on, he can take over.
Okay.
Sure.
Are you able to hear me?
Keep talking. Not really.
Judge, you sound like you're kind of like warbled. So maybe if you call in instead of using the computer.
That could be tricky. Let's see.
You know, what I can do for right now is I think I know what the judge was going to ask me to talk about anyway.
Great.
So,
thank you.
The judge would, I think, was going to ask
me. He's not here with me, so.
So
I
Mercy,
think
mute the judge.
I think that what the judge was going to talk about was whether or not talk about the moratoriums that are currently affecting evictions in the state of Hawaii. So as everybody knows,
Yeah.
the governor has imposed several different the governor has imposed a moratorium on residential evictions for non-payment. So that means that for the time being, you can't evict somebody for not paying the rent. There's also a national moratorium that has been issued by the CDC that prevents evictions for non-payment.
Mercy, how would I find
Running until the end of the year. So the governor's moratorium right now is scheduled to end at the end of September.
Give me a number to call, and I'll do
like,
that right now.
Much
Okay.
like,
Excuse me.
What number should I call?
Excuse me, Judge. Mercy, did you put in the chat box
I
the
did
number
put it
that
in
you
the
can call?
chat, but I think he's calling on two numbers. I think he's calling on a phone and a computer. That's what it sounds like that. Because
So,
I
Judge, you may
muted
want to
him.
turn off your audio and your computer. We apologize for this, you guys. David, piggyback again, there's a moratorium through September 30th for the state that you do expect it to be extended to the end of the year because there's a federal moratorium. Is that correct?
well, I'm certainly expecting that the federal moratorium isn't going to move. Right now, there's a lot of question about whether or not it's legal. As much as many things that come out of the current administration, the presidential administration, there's always questions about legality of things. And one of the questions that's come up is whether or not the CDC has the authority to do what the CDC has done. One of the big questions that comes up is that, especially with the CDC's moratorium, it puts in some very substantial penalties if you evict somebody. For example, in some cases, the CDC moratorium calls for a $500,000 fine and jail if you violate their moratorium. So the general consensus across the country so far, it seems to be, most lawyers think that the CDC did this to basically scare anybody from evicting people because, maybe the CDC does have the power to do this. And, do you want to be the guy that finds out? And probably you don't. So it seems that for practical purposes, until the end of the year, you can't evict anybody for non-payment. Another thing that you should probably know is that because of the Hawaii's laws regarding the declaration of an emergency, you also cannot terminate a month-to-month tenancy on 45 days notice, except in very limited circumstances. For the realtors out there, you should know that a month-to-month tenancy could be terminated on 45 days notice if there was a sale of a property. So let's say it's a residential home, the home sells, there's a tenant in there already. Once the home sells, then a 45-day notice could be given to get the tenant, to terminate the tenancy for that tenant.
You can't do it in escrow. You've got to wait till it records.
The law says that that you can give the 45 days notice after a bona fide sale. So I'm taking that to mean after the sale. So it would seem to me it would be after title changes.
Okay, we have a lot of questions coming from Karen. Eviction question. If tenants are acting in a dangerous and threatening manner where the police have been called and complaints have been made to the Maui Police Department and the AOAO, can these tenants be evicted?
Generally speaking, the only types of evictions that are not allowed right now are evictions for non-payment. So if you have a tenant who is misbehaving, then there are provisions in the law that allow for termination of that tenancy. Generally speaking, if you have a tenant who is breaking rules that could be considered non-life threatening, for example, trash, noise, leaving things in the hallway that they're not supposed to leave, that sort of thing, Hawaii law allows for landlords to give a 10-day notice to the tenant. If they don't fix the problem within 10 days, then it allows the landlords to terminate the tenancy and sue for eviction.
Back to that question. Okay.
Oh, I was just going to say, if you have a tenant who's running around with a gun shooting at people, you don't need to give them 10 days notice. You can terminate that tenancy immediately.
Going back to the question about waiting until the escrow is recorded, Gina Duncan is asking, doesn't the law say that after a bona fide buyer is found, then you can give notice? Or do you read the law to be after the recordation of the sale of the property?
I read it to say when the sale is done. Now, I mean, that's my reading of it. I will tell you this, that the Office of Consumer Protection, which is a state office, is being rather aggressive about things. So, and if you violate any of the state's laws, you might be subject to a $5,000 fine and also jail time. So, you know, to me, it's not a good time to be aggressive. I don't think I'm going to do well in jail, so I'm not planning on doing anything that might get me there.
Okay, another question, and this is a long one, from Rosalind. In Maui, we have an MTM tenant that has been paying rent on time in November of 2019. Their lease ended and the lease converted to an MTM. I don't know what MTM is, but in January 2020, owner decided to list the property with agreement from the tenant that they could stay as long as the property was kept up for showings. In July 2020, the listing expired and was off the market for a month before listing again at a lower price. The property immediately went into escrow, at which time we gave a 45-day notice to tenant, at which time the owner decided to come back to Maui to stay in the unit after tenant moved out until escrow closes. However, since then, the property fell out of escrow and the owner has decided to cancel the listing and move back into the unit. Tenants are trying to make a case that we have to give a new 45-day notice from the time they were notified that the owner was going to move back and live in until they decide to list again. What is your response to that?
Okay, so first let me, I probably should have started off with the caveat that, you know, I'm a lawyer. You guys are unfortunately not my clients. So, so please just take this information as general information. Don't take this as any type of legal advice. Normally, if you gave me like a detailed fact pattern like that, I would sit there and I would ask a lot of questions and to tease it out, and then I'd give you an answer. And of course, I'd be billing you at the same time. But the main thing that I would respond with is that it doesn't even sound like a sale actually happened. So if a sale didn't happen, then the current laws don't allow for a termination of a month-to-month tenancy. So not only is the tenant entitled to a 45-day notice once a sale happens, but right now I'm not even sure that you're entitled to give a 45-day notice, period.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I just quickly, Dan O'Mara, I just want to know if we can hear you because you will be talking shortly.
Rita, is that you? Can you hear me? This
Perfect.
is Dan.
Okay, great.
All right.
We've got more questions for David. I just want to check on you. Another question. I know that if a tenant is not paying rent, they can't be evicted during the current eviction moratorium. But if there's a tenant on a month-to-month lease paying, good tenant, can a landlord give 45 days notice to end that lease at this time? I see that a landlord can't raise rent at this time, but does that all tie into the expiration of the emergency proclamation by the governor?
Okay, complex question. Let me just give you the brief answer is that under Hawaii's emergency laws, they say that during the pendency of an emergency, you can't terminate month-to-month tenancies, except under those two limited circumstances. When one was, you know, when there's a sale, and the other is when the owners or a member of the owner's family is going to be moving into the unit. So, generally speaking, if you have a month-to-month tenant, you can't do anything to terminate that tenancy unless there's bad behavior or, you know, some other circumstance that would allow for a termination. But if things are just normal, no, you can't give them a 45-day notice to terminate at this point in time. Once the emergency has been, once the state says that there's no more emergency, then that law would go away. I will note, however, that the island of Kauai, remember that there was a flood back in 2018? There's still an emergency for the island of Kauai for that flood. So this pandemic, I mean, when do you think that the governor is going to let this emergency go? To me, I'm not even sure if I'm still going to be alive.
That's not very positive. Okay. Minnow has a question. Minnow, did you say that a notice to vacate is possible if the owner wants to move back into the unit?
Yes.
Okay. And during a transaction, can the owner insist on access to a rental unit for transaction inspections with proper notice? What if tenant objects on basis of exposure to COVID through the inspection period of the buyers? Is that possible?
You know, COVID hasn't done anything to change the rules of the landlord-tenant laws. The governor has changed certain landlord-tenant laws, but one of the rules that is still applicable is that a landlord is entitled to show the place or inspect the place given 2 days notice. So
Okay.
if you give 2 days notice to the tenant and it's during reasonable hours, the tenant has to oblige. You can't abuse it though. You can't send them, you know, a half dozen 2-day notices saying I'm going to be coming in for the, you know, for the next 6, you know, for 6 days in a row, starting on this day and going till, you know, you can't do that kind of stuff. But if you want to give a 2-day notice to inspect, and if you want to give a 2-day notice to show the place, then that can be done.
Okay, we're gonna just do one more question and then we're gonna take it to Dan. If not, Judge, if you wanna unmute. So John Keevan is asking, if the tenant has a year lease that has no extension in the lease, can the tenant be evicted if they try to stay after the lease is over?
Yeah, I think that they can. Right now, my view of it is that although there's no way to terminate a month-to-month tenancy, there's also no obligation for a landlord to renew a tenancy. So if you have a lease, for example, that ended on ended August, at the end of August, and the tenant has stayed over, that is something that you could actually file an eviction on if you wanted to get the tenant out, provided that your lease doesn't say that it automatically becomes month to month. Many leases, especially if you're using the Hawaii Realtors form, have a provision in them that I don't remember if you check it off or if you don't check it off, but there are provisions in them that say that they will automatically become month to month unless one side or the other gives 30 days notice prior to the end of the lease. So what you'll want to do is, if you have a lease that is going to expire, what you generally want to do is make sure it doesn't become month to month, because once it becomes month to month, you can't terminate it by giving 45 days notice, and you can't terminate it if the tenant doesn't pay. So I've been telling people that a month-to-month tenant who doesn't pay the rent is essentially bulletproof.
Wow. Okay, at this point, Judge, can you unmute yourself and can we try this again?
Sure. Can you hear me, Rita?
Perfectly.
Is that good, Rita?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. You know, the caveat that David referred to, I really should go through that just for the benefit of the panelists. Please understand that nothing said during this roundtable should be taken as legal advice, and there is no creation of an attorney between yourself and any of the panelists. Viewers should contact their own attorney.
Judge, we can't hear you again.
Advice with respect to their own particular legal circumstance or matter.
Sorry, Judge, we can't hear you again.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. We'll try you again, but you're.
Mercy, are you able to just tell me the number that I'm supposed to call?
I did send it.
Picking it up.
Yeah, I did send it to you privately.
If you could mute yourself as well, Judge, and we're going to go on to Dan O'Mara, who's the managing attorney for legal aid. Dan, you are up.
Okay, I going to second most of basically what David Chee was saying. I'm with Legal Aid. I'm the managing attorney for our housing and consumer unit, and so we handle mostly tenant cases. So I was going to try and share my screen with you because I had a couple things that are worth sharing. So if you give me a second here, I'm going to try and find my Zoom again so I can share the screen.
Yeah, we saw you trying earlier, so you definitely can do it.
All right. Yeah, now I just can't have to get the, let's see. There we go. All right. So let's go with this. All right. So I think I need to back up to the beginning of this slide. Hold on just a second.
Hover down and hit share screen. We don't see your screen. There we go.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right. So let me, oops, that's not what you want. From beginning.
Just
okay, is that, all right. Do you have it now? It should show, say it should have an introductory shot. Is that on there?
Yes.
Okay. So what we had is just a couple myths and facts that we wanted to kind of share, and I think David would probably, we've talked about these things with David too. So, and David kind of touched on it. So right now, one of the myths is that landlords are able to send a generic 45 days notice again after the eviction moratorium ends, which is currently September 30th. We hear that a lot, that says, well, I'm going to wait till the moratorium ends, I'm going to send a 45-day notice. But the fact is that the moratorium restrictions on evictions are for non-payment. So the 45-day notice is prohibited in a separate provision of the emergency proclamation. So the fact that the moratorium ends, whether it's the state moratorium or the CDC moratorium, isn't relevant to whether you can do the non-payment, the 45-day notices. The 45-day notice is contained in a statute that was invoked when the proclamation started March 4th. And those are the exceptions that David noted are if there's a bona fide purchaser gives a notice, which is after the closing, we agree with them on that, or if the landlord or the immediate family member is moving back in. What David pointed out is that, like in the Kauai case, as long as these emergency proclamations are in effect, and as long as that statute is in effect, which is totally separate from the moratorium, you're not able to send 45-day notices. And that throws people off because a lot of people are saying, well, once the moratorium ends, I can do it. So that's one thing we want to point out that's kind of a recurring theme of what people call legal aid about. The next one is that landlords can provide their 5-day non-payment notice or their 45-day notice during the moratorium and just wait until the moratorium ends. Basically, they want to queue up, get to the front of the line so that once it ends, their 45-day notice or their 5-day notice will kick in immediately. So again, this is a moratorium-based restriction. So the moratorium does not allow the 5-day notice, and the proclamation doesn't allow the 45-day notices. So either one of those is not permitted at this time, certainly at least until September 30 for the 5-day notice, but probably December 31st because of the CDC moratorium. So you can't send those 5-day notice, you can't send the 45-day notice at all. So if you're trying to start a case now, or if you file a case, or if you rely on a notice that was sent during the moratorium, then you are you're probably going to have to start over. You've just wasted your time, and you've set yourself up to have your case defended against easily because you've sent an invalid notice. And I wanted to point those out because at Legal Aid we get a lot of calls. Now we get calls from landlords, but a lot of our calls are from tenants, and a lot of the challenges right now are sort of the pressure on tenants to pay or get out for whatever reason because of, people are just not interested in living together anymore, whatever the reason. And so there's a lot of pent up things, and landlords are trying to look for ways kind of around it. They're trying to get around it in some fashion. And these are some of the ways that they're trying to get around getting rid of a tenant. And, and some of that pressure works. Some tenants are just fed up, and landlords and tenants are fed up with each other and they just leave. But to the extent they seek legal advice, or to the extent they are going to defend themselves, they're probably going to prevail in court if it goes that far. So I want to kind of point these things out because these are some real challenges that are happening now with in landlord-tenant. And those are the two things I want to point out. And otherwise, I'll stop and just answer any questions. And
yep. There's a question from Minnow. And just to let you guys know, we are going to hear from Tracey from the Mediation Center next, and then we're going to talk about the new funds that are available. So the question from Minnow is, are 45-day notice to vacate allowed if tenants are paying rent? Does normal landlord-tenant code apply to remove a tenant when rents are paid?
Well, and that gets to the point that if you have a month, and that's oftentimes what a landlord uses the 45-day notice for, is to give somebody a notice, even if they're paying it, they're just ready to move on to a new tenant. But as that 45-day notice during the emergency proclamation is not permitted. Is that to say that it might not work? Well, it might work should it work? No, it shouldn't work because it's not permitted. And we're actually, we have engaged with landlords on that, and we're actually going to court with a couple of landlords who sent out 45-day notices when people were paying when they shouldn't have. So, so the legal attorney question is no, you can't do that.
Okay, Dan
If I could-
McDonald.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure that you know that during normal times, I think that Dad said this, that during normal times, that is what you can do. A 45-day notice can be given to a month-to-month tenant for any reason or no reason, as long as it's not discriminatory or illegal. For example, you can't do it just because you want to discriminate against somebody racially, and you can't do it because if you are retaliating against the tenant. But all things being normal, under normal circumstances, yes, you can give a 45-day notice to a tenant who's been paying, but these are not normal times.
Dan McDonald has a question. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm going to add to David's. I'm going to actually give you a practice tip that we see that David would probably agree is a mistake. We see some landlords in normal times when they give a 45-day notice, they'll have a date for their notice, and then they'll have a date by which you vacate, and they've somehow calculated 45 days. It's a mistake. You might have done the math correctly, but there's so much peril with when did they get the notice? Was it in the mail? And the best, cleanest 45-day notice, and I think David would agree with this, and we're always kind of happy when we see a landlord say, well, this is March 1st, I want you out on April 15th. We kind of like that because it's probably not a valid 45-day notice. You really should just say, it's March 1st, I'm giving you 45 days to move out, and don't put any calculation, don't put any extraneous language, just make it clean, simple, and don't do the math, because as soon as you do the math, there's probably going to be some glitch with timing. So anyway, go ahead.
Wow. Okay. Well, Dan McDonald has a question in regards to 127A-30 to confirm price increases are prohibited on both listing prices and on fixed term lease renewals.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
When he said listing prices, is he saying like a sale, or is he saying a rental?
I assume rental, because Dan handles rentals. Dan, if you're on, I mean.
Okay, because I wouldn't view a sale like a purchase. If somebody's selling their house, I don't know that quite applies. I wouldn't apply it to that, but if it's a rental, yes, yeah.
Actually, the way I read it, it says that it lists as commodities residential housing in 127A-30. It says you can't raise the price on commodities. So, theoretically, the price of gas at Costco should not go up after an emergency has been declared. The price of meat should not go up. Price of bottled water should not go up. So everything should have been frozen as of March 4th when the governor declared an emergency for the state. Now it says that the sale price of commodities, which includes residential housing, should not increase. So I view it as saying that you should not be selling a house for more than you would have sold it for on March 4th.
Wow. Well, there are no brokers I can ask right now on that I would dare to ask that. We're going to take one or two more questions, then we're going to go to Tracey, because we have an hour left about the funding. If the tenant is delivered along with the sale of the property as stated in the purchase contract, will the new owner or landlord be able to vacate the tenant after recordation if the moratorium is still in place?
The answer to that is yes, because the moratorium is not what is causing you to not be able to terminate a month-to-month tenancy. The thing that's preventing you from terminating a month-to-month tenancy is 127A-30. It's a separate law that exists regardless of the moratorium. That law says that you can't terminate a month-to-month tenancy during an emergency, except when you sell a place or if you're having a family member move in. So if you sell the place, you can give the 45-day notice to terminate the month-to-month tenancy. I guess
and I'm going to add to what David said. He made it clear it was month to month, and frankly, you could do that if you bought a property right now and it closed today. The new owner could give the notice today, even with the moratorium, because the 45-day notice is not tied to the moratorium. So the question asked, it ties it to the moratorium. The 45-day notice, if you're buying a property, isn't tied to the moratorium. So you could do it even during the moratorium if you've closed on the property. You don't have to wait till after moratorium ends. You could do it, you know, today, give them a 45-day notice to be out late October if escrow closed today.
Thank you. Okay, we'll get some more questions, but in the meantime, I really want to bring in Tracey Whitkin. She's Executive Director of the Mediation Center, and then we will go into the different funding. Tracey, thank you for joining us. You can just unmute yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Aloha, everyone. I'm here to talk about mediation, and I want to specifically note that I'm the Executive Director of the Mediation Center of the Pacific on Oahu. You have Maui Mediation Services here on Maui that will meet your mediation needs. Unfortunately, the Executive Director, Bhavon Bowers, was not able to participate today, but I want to make it clear that they are the organization on your island that will provide services. So I want to talk about mediation in general and why it's so important in this arena, particularly now that there is rental assistance available that you'll be hearing about shortly. So yesterday when we were doing this presentation, a lot of the presenters mentioned the challenges, the anger, the frustration, the breakdown in relationships between landlords and tenants because of all the stress of the last few months. Tenants have lost their jobs, they're scared, landlords aren't getting their income, they're frustrated. So if there is a difficult relationship, you really want to consider the mediation process. So through mediation, and I'll talk about how we're managing it during times of social distancing, but through mediation, you're able to work with an impartial mediator who helps landlord and tenant talk to each other in a way that they haven't been able to and negotiate agreements that are going to work for both of them. And landlords and tenants really need each other right now. So what's important is if there is a difficult relationship, you can contact Maui Mediation Services and they will contact the tenant for you. So if you're a property manager or a landlord, you contact Maui Mediation Services, provide them with the name and contact information of the tenant. They will reach out to the tenant, help the tenant understand what mediation is, why mediation would be valuable, and why it's an important process to engage in. Key, there is no cost for the mediation services. We are fortunate to be receiving funding through the CARES funds to provide these services, which underscores the importance of the mediation process. So right now, you're going to hear about the rental assistance programs offered by the state that was just rolled out at the beginning of this week. And what's really important, if landlord and tenant have a great relationship, tenant is able to apply for the funds and qualifies, it's going to go to the landlord. So some of them may think that's all we need. A couple important things to think about, even if you have a good relationship. Number one, the tenant will qualify for 3 months moving forward from August through October. And then they will have to go back and recertify for the last 2 months. So you might want a mediated agreement confirming that the tenant is going to go back and reapply. There's going to be a second phase of the funds which will qualify for back rental payments back to March. Again, you might want a mediated agreement that confirms that the tenant will go back and apply for those back rental amounts. Because remember, the moratorium now extends till December 31. So you want the landlord, it's in the landlord's interest to have the support, the confirmation of the tenant that they are going to be applying for these funds, all three parts of it. The other opportunity right now is there is free financial counseling for tenants. And so not only is this a benefit for the tenant, but it's a benefit for a landlord that the tenant goes through financial counseling, starts making plans, realistic plans of what their future is going to look like. So in January, when ideally there's no more moratorium, landlord and tenant don't go back to the same place where tenant isn't paying because they don't have any funds and landlord's trying to figure out what to do. So that would be another ideal item to include in a mediated agreement. Not every landlord and tenant are going to qualify, not every tenant will qualify for the funds. And in that situation, it shouldn't be, well, then we just will wait till the moratorium ends. Again, I would encourage landlord and tenant to participate in the mediation process. There may be other rental assistance programs out there that a tenant could qualify for. There may be, it may be the tenant hasn't received their unemployment yet, but as soon as they do, they can set up a payment plan. So there's a lot of other issues or approaches that a landlord and tenant could take to reach agreements that give them both the comfort level that they know what's happening. The landlord is at least getting some payments, tenant is making a commitment, so that there is something in place. And particularly if there isn't a good working relationship, this can be very, very valuable for both landlords and tenants. Now, in times of COVID, I know Maui Mediation Services, you need to contact them and schedule the mediation. They may have some limited in-person. Primarily, though, the mediation sessions at this time are being conducted via video conference and also via phone. So there are options to be able to work through these processes without ever having to meet face-to-face, and they will certainly work with the landlord and the tenant to make the services available. So that's
Tracey, question.
Sure.
Should the owners or the property manager contact Maui Mediation? And is there a cost to that?
Okay, so there is, and very important, there is no cost to landlord or tenant. The service is free. So you don't have anything to lose. Now, if you have a property manager who's authorized by the owner to negotiate on behalf of them, I would certainly encourage the property manager. However, if the property manager doesn't have any authority, then really the owner might want to consider being the person participating. Then owner can make a decision whether, you know, once they hear the tenant's story, maybe they want to temporarily reduce the rent. Maybe they want to forgive part of it. Maybe there is some other workout that the tenant can do. But some property managers are empowered. The other option to consider is having the property manager participate with the owner available so that the property manager can confer with them. You don't want to have somebody who doesn't have the authority to participate in the mediation process, go through the process and then find out, oh, sorry, I don't have any authority to reach an agreement. That's just going to make the relationship that much more challenging. So
thank you, Tracey.
Sure.
Any other questions, you guys, in the chat box? We're going to give this a judge 3 times the charm. If you want to come on in and introduce Jillian and Lori next to talk about the funds available.
Well, first of all,
yeah, you know, we can't hear you. Sorry, Judge, we can't hear you.
You know what?
So,
I think the judge is both on the computer and the phone because he did call in. So he needs to just speak on the phone.
So you need to close your audio. Just get off the computer, Judge.
Okay.
See, I muted him already, so it's his phone.
Okay.
You hear that?
Yeah. So what we're going to do is so for those of you who are on here, as one of our speakers shared, newly funded funds for landlords for the tenants who have been unable to pay. So we're going to invite Jillian Okamoto from the Catholic Charities of Hawaii. So they take care of all outer island funding. Hi, Jillian. Thanks for joining us. You can unmute yourself and share with us all this information of the funding, please.
Sure. Thank you. Hang on. Not the best at share screen, so bear with me.
Okay. And if you could just raise your volume a little bit or speak up to the mic, that would be great.
Can you hear me better?
A little bit better, yes.
Okay. So this is the Rent Relief and Housing Assistance Program that the state of Hawaii just implemented on September 8th. So we launched pretty much alongside with the governor's press conference at 2 o'clock on Tuesday. So right now, AUW, along with us, are the co-intermediaries to administer this funding. Right now, phase one has 50 million to help assist renters and homeowners who have experienced a reduction in income because of unemployment or reduction in work hours due to COVID-19. So again, phase one is currently being implemented right now. There is a phase two with another 50 mil, but that hasn't been released yet. And that's going to take care of, you'll see further, March through July. So right now we can only cover August through December. So like I said, we're co-intermediaries with AUW. AUW has partnered with nonprofits on Oahu and also credit unions on Oahu, but also statewide for the credit unions. So both agencies are pretty much statewide. So it's important to know if you apply with AUW, do not apply with Catholic Charities.
Oh,
because we cannot duplicate assistance. So we can pay August through December rents, mortgage, or HOA. So important date to remember, December 15th, last date we can take applications. That's for Catholic Charities though, because we're not allowed to cut any more checks after the 28th. So we're allowing our guys some time to process apps.
So question, Jillian. So you said that they cannot apply to both Aloha United Way and Catholic Charities. It's my understanding that the Catholic Charities, you guys do most of the funding outer island. Is that true? So should all these Maui people who are on here, should they apply just to the Catholic Charities?
Can, but I believe AUW has some credit unions that are going to be coming on board. It's just that I don't know which ones on Maui that are going to be involved. I think they will announce that once they have their MOUs in place.
So the first phase of 50 million will be from August to December, and that includes rent, mortgages, and HOA. The second phase of 50 million will take care of March to July, and that is where, can you put in the chat box the link that they can go to? And is it a process that both the tenant and the landlord have to participate in?
So yes, the landlord will have to fill out a vendor verification form. So first though, the tenant will apply. And then once we get their application and documents, we will then send a verification form to the landlord that needs to be completed, which pretty much verifies any rents that are due. And also it asks for some W-9 information as well.
And who provides the W-9?
Well, it would be the landlord. So anything kind of to do with the W-9 information will communicate straight through Catholic Charities or our partners to the landlord. None of that information gets passed to the client.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Is there a cap? Is it up to $2,000 per month for a landlord?
That's on the next slide, I believe. But
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. So just FYI, these are the eligibility requirements. Pretty straightforward. Full-time resident, state of Hawaii, 18 years old plus, demonstrate loss of income, no asset limit, 100% AMI, and then valid and current tenancy agreement. So that last one, we kind of replaced lease with tenancy agreement because upon consulting with Mr. Chee, there are different variations of what is valid and current agreements. So we're now kind of using the language tenancy agreement. And this is the AMI. So if your tenant lives on Oahu, in Maui County, one-person household, they make $71,805 today for their gross annual income, they're ineligible because they make $5 too much. So this is the caps. If they make more than this, we cannot assist. And then here are the eligible expenses. So like you said, there's 2,000 for Oahu, but neighbor islands, so Maui County is 1,500.
Okay.
If their rent is less than this though, we're only gonna pay the rent amount.
Mm.
And then of course, like Tracy said, the payments go directly to the landlord or the property manager. There are going to be lump sum payments of 3 months. So if they apply in September, they're technically eligible if they haven't paid for September, October, November. If they haven't paid for August, we can go back and they can get August, September, October. So it's just a three, it's in threes. If they need help outside of the 3 months, they will contact whoever they applied with and they will have to recertify, which is just kind of just showing that they're still in hardship. So still not working, still on, not receiving unemployment, et cetera, et cetera. Again, we cannot duplicate assistance. So our system on the back end will flag certain, I guess, criteria and information through the applications. Even so the two systems, our system and AUW's will talk. And also the counties that already established some of the COVID-19 programs, our system can also talk with their systems. So any type of duplications will be flagged. But to prevent that, again, just have your tenant apply to one agency.
Okay, and there we have a question from Dan. Jillian, you said you cannot apply to both AUW and Catholic Charities for state aid. Can a tenant have a parallel application with Catholic Charities and one of the counties also at the same time?
So this is where it gets tricky. So technically they can apply to 5 different COVID-19 programs, as long as each agency pays a small portion that doesn't exceed that month's rent. Does that make sense? So if, say, they applied with AUW for 1,500, but their rent is 2,000, they can then apply with us and we can cover the extra 500 that AUW could not.
Okay, the vendor verification form asks for the rent amount. If the tenant is getting partial assistance from another source, do I put in the net amount or the total amount due?
So this one is also a little tricky because public housing, Section 8 voucher holders, or any type of 30% rents are not eligible for this program. But if they're getting, like, it gets really confusing. If they're getting rents, state rent supplement, which is between like $250 to $500, because it's still not as low as 30%, they are eligible. So I don't want to get into the weeds, but for the landlord verification, it would be safer if you did put the full rent, but then make a comment somewhere that's, saying this is full rent, but client receives state rent supplement of this much.
So what if a scenario, if they paid partial rent, but not the total amount in the past few months?
Then the landlord will put what is owed. So actually, I take it back then. The state rent supplement part would have been paid by the state. So landlord should just put what is owed.
What is owed? Angie Williams, the payments are made directly to the property management or the landlord. A question from Lynette is, if there are 2 unrelated tenants sharing the rent, can each tenant receive up to $1,500 a month?
It would be, what is the rent amount?
Okay.
So if they're sharing a rent of 1,000, they can only apply for 1,000. Okay. And if they have 2 separate leases, then technically they would be eligible for up to 1,500. But again, it's whatever is stated on the lease.
Okay. Do you have more slides, Jillian? I'm
Oh,
sorry.
yeah, sorry.
Okay. No, I wanted to ask those questions for those.
So how can you help? A lot of folks aren't really kind of, I guess, asking for help because a lot of these folks are finding themselves in this situation for the first time. Some folks have actually just been going through their savings, going to family members, friends, which is great, but do know that this assistance is out there. So any of your tenants that are having difficulties, please let them know. Go to that website, the hihousinghelp.com, and you'll get links to our page and Aloha United Way's page. There's also other COVID-19 assistance programs, which Lori is probably going to go over for Maui County. And, you know, it's really important that tenants are educated about all of this. And it's no shame, because to be honest, there are over 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 people applying. I'm not going to remember everybody's name. It's, you know, we want to help. So, and we want to make it as smooth as possible.
Thank you.
For the third bullet right there, AUW is requiring a W-9, but our program is a little different. Again, our vendor verification form is a combination of verifying what is owed plus the W-9 information. So ours just looks a little different. For landlords and property managers, payment can be done via electronic funds transfer or a check. AUWs is probably going to come from one of their nonprofits or the credit unions that they are partnering with. Ours will come from bill.com, and also though we'll have our name on it, Catholic Charities Hawaii. So it would be helpful though if everybody did electronic funds transfer, but we can do physical checks, not a problem.
I'm not sure if you can answer this question, Jillian, or if the attorney is online, but are there any consequences of accepting assistance if you're getting funds it's on your credit or anything else?
You mean like for a tenant, is there going to be a consequence for getting assistance?
Yes.
Well, it's got to be better than getting a judgment against you for the money that's owed. So I would think it would be a positive thing. I don't think that there's any reporting that gets done in the tenant's name regarding the fact that assistance gets given. In fact, the thing I wanted to really mention that emphasize for about the program is that although it's being touted as a rent relief program for tenants, I really view this as a rent relief program for landlords, because the only thing that's happening here is the tenant applies and the landlord gets the money. So it is the tenants are getting a credit on their accounts with the landlord, but the landlord gets the money. So you know, I think that one of the things that landlords really ought to be doing is reaching out to any of the tenants that they have, including tenants that are current on their rent. I'm aware of a lot of tenants who are just, you know, going through their savings and putting all their resources into things so that they don't fall behind, and perhaps other bills are going unpaid, medical bills or things like that, just because they need to have a roof over their head to make sure that their parents or their grandparents don't go homeless. So you might want to reach out to all of your tenants and tell them to apply, because it can only help you, the landlord, because once again, you get the money. So anyway, just wanted to mention that.
Thanks. And Dan had a question for you, Jillian, to confirm, if there is not a formal written lease, do you have a workaround for oral leases?
So the state did kind of go over that, so that's why we had that I guess definition change of current tenancy agreement. So I think that is the workaround for oral leases. Do know that for my side though, we'll probably need like an email or actually the vendor verification form kind of confirms that the tenant is living there anyway and also paying this much of rent. So I would probably just get that. It'll be probably case by case. So if the applicant doesn't have an original lease, then the landlord has to let us know that the vendor, like it was all oral. So then I can let my guys know that we will take just the vendor verification form.
Question from Sarah Golden for the attorneys. I have a tenant that moved up and moved out in the middle of a valid lease. Do they still have to pay rent until that is rented out again?
This is kind of a separate issue, but generally speaking, in the state of Hawaii, leases are considered contracts. If you have a lease that goes for a particular period of time, say for a year, and a tenant leaves at, say, month 3, you're entitled to collect rent for the remaining 9 months from that same tenant, minus whatever money you get from a replacement tenant, generally.
The monies, the funding, you guys, does that have to be repaid?
No.
No.
Okay, so this is payback by the tenants when they can't afford to or no. Haley, I don't quite understand your question. Sorry if you want to ask. So it doesn't have to be paid back.
Free money. It's free money.
Free money. That's why you have to have a good relationship with your tenant and the landlord. Keep putting your questions in, but in the meantime, we're going to invite Lori now, who works for the Department of Housing. There's so many funds. I think Yuki, when I talked to her earlier, who can't join us, but is going to listen to the recording, it's amazing, she said, that people don't know about all the funds that are available. So she's wanting us to get the word out. So Lori, can you join us? Lori Ann from the Department of Housing, share with us all the funding available through the Maui County, please.
Sure. Good morning.
Jillian.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lori Tsuhako, and I'm the director of the county's Department of Housing and Human Concerns. So you just heard from Jillian about a new state initiative. So the county has a couple of different sources of funding programs that may also be of benefit to landlords as well as tenants. The first is that for several years now, the county has funded what we call a rental assistance program. This year, in this fiscal year, it's funded at $2 million. That funding is divided into between 4 different agencies, and I'll tell you, it's Women Helping Women, Kahale Akeola, MEO, and Family Life Center. And those 4 agencies assist tenants with paying their rent, paying utilities, paying security deposits. They will help, some of the agencies will help with arrears. So it's a good resource for tenants to actually check that out, or for landlords if they know their tenants are struggling. The largest program the county offers was just initiated a few months ago. It's called the HELP program. It stands for the Hawaii Emergency Laulima Partnership. It's a grant from the county to Maui Economic Opportunity. So by the end of the year, I think MEO would have distributed more than $4.5 to $5 million in both county and CARES Act funding to those who need assistance. So I think rather than read through all of the eligibility and the documentation that's required, I will simply tell you, or your folks that you work with, to go to MEO's website. They're trying not to do too much in-person contact with the public, but they can check out all of the different criteria for receiving assistance. So there's maximum allowable assistance within 30-day periods. People can reapply in a second and subsequent 30-day period, but the amount of assistance is limited by their household size. So it's meoinc.org or 249-2970. So 249-2970. MEO also does low income energy assistance programs. So it's a good, MEO is a good agency to talk with if your clients have a multitude of needs. So if some of them may need assistance with utilities, some also with rent, things of that nature, with food, with medical bills, with insurance costs. So it's a good place to begin because MEO has different sources of resources in order to help families, and they can help direct families to the resources that are most appropriate. The other source of funding that is available in the community comes to us from federal sources. And these are what's called Emergency Solution Grant Funds, and they come from HUD. And those are administered currently, the CARES Act additional funding from HUD is administered by Family Life Center. Family Life Center is at Kane Street in Kahului, across the street from Foodland. The phone number is 877-0880. And again, this is another agency that administers funding from multiple sources for multiple purposes. So a good place to begin, having your clients or the landlords call and talk about what the needs are, have the staff help make a good assessment of what resources would be the most appropriate, and then start packaging those resources to meet the needs of those families.
Is there a cap on either one of those, the MEO or the other one, per family?
Yes, there are. So, and the caps just vary depending on what the sources are. So what we're trying to do is we're putting together a fabric of resources from different funding sources with different eligibility requirements. So like you heard from Jillian, their state program is limited to people earning 100% or below of area median income. Some of these other federally supported programs cap income at 60 to 80% of AMI. So it's really a matter of having the patience to roll through, to talk to somebody, to kind of lay your cards on the table and help them to make a good assessment of what families are eligible for, and then start creating a plan that sort of fills in the pukas of what is needed by that family. So the two agencies I talked with you about, MEO, Family Life Center, both have the capacity to take in those calls, those inquiries from families, talk with people, ask questions, figure out what's going on, what the needs are, helping people prioritize. If you have a finite amount of money, you know, which one do I handle first? And again, like Tracey was saying, that's where mediation can help. And we have a very good mediation center here on Maui. The county is about to execute a contract with them for CARES Act funding, so that they can make even more of an effort to help landlords, families, mediate those financial agreements.
Thank you. I don't know if this question is directed to lawyer Jillian, but Haley's asking if rent is $1,800 and the maximum is $1,500 for Maui, the outer islands. So it's Jillian's question. The tenant just has to pay the difference of the $300. Is that correct?
So they can, or they can, again, if they applied with us, we'll pay the $1,500, but then they can also apply to AUW's program as long as it's only for $300. So we cannot pay more than the rent.
So the agencies, again, cross-check each other's information to make sure there's no duplicate payments.
We're just not allowed to pay, again, more than the cap. But I would probably suggest going through the Maui County programs just to avoid any confusions.
Yeah, I would too. So what we're talking about here is if a family can qualify for, let's say, if the rent is 1,800 and Catholic Charity allowance is 1,500, then they can seek that the balance of the cost of rent from an agency here on Maui that uses either county funds, or if they're eligible can use emergency solution grant or community development block grant funding. So the most, I mean, if you think about it, rather than sending the folks that you know and having them call 20 different people, right, and getting frustrated because it's taking so long to get all this together, is use MEO and use Family Life Center as the gateway agencies, lay out all the needs so that they understand what the totality of the need is, and help these families sort of piece those aid packages together to make them whole, and then help create a plan going forward. You know, I think that that's so much less stressful on families than giving them, you know, 20 phone calls and say, here, go find somebody who can help you with your rent. Otherwise, you know, you might get evicted, and it's just so stressful, and it's palpable. The stress in our community is palpable. Everybody is like on the edge. So as a service system, we have to all help people navigate as best as we can and make it as easy as possible, even though it's still going to be hard because you're dealing with multiple eligibility requirements.
I'm sorry, Lori, is there a cap for Maui County residents of the total amount that they can receive for any kind of financial assistance?
No, not for county programs. But like Jillian said, the concept is the county assistance is not going to pay you more than what the need is, right? So if the rent is $1,500, you're not going to get $2,000 to pay the rent. So it's limited to what those rental agreements say, and the reimbursement or the payments for those rent costs, for example, would be paid directly to the owner, to the landlord, not to the applicant. So that the money doesn't go through the tenant in order to pay the landlord. It just goes directly. And it's worked out better for us to use that method.
Dan asked Jillian, I think the answer, did the rental assistant agencies share a database of applicants to avoid overlapping?
So I just put back the thing, a comment. We don't share the database, but our two databases do talk to each other. And it should be known that on our application form, both sides, the applicant will have to consent to share certain information. And that information is then flagged if both databases contain it. So say your social security number is 4 zeros. If AUW has one that also has 4 zeros, it'll be flagged and then elevated to kind of like a decision-making spreadsheet. And pretty much whoever, where they applied first is probably going to pay it out. And then the other one will deny the other one.
Another question we have is, if a tenant hasn't been filing taxes, are they unable to qualify for aid? I don't know if David or Dan or someone can, or even Jillian, Lori, jump in.
No, I don't think it would disqualify them from receiving assistance from the county.
Same for the state program.
Great. David, you have anything to add there? Or Dan?
Oh, I was just going to say that I think that there was some concern by, I know that the judge has previously expressed concern that some landlords who perhaps have not been paying their taxes don't want to give out a W-9 and don't want to receive the money. You know, where a W-9 gets where a 1099 is going to get issued. And in the past, he's asked me to comment about what I thought was going to happen if a landlord went to court to try to evict the tenant who hasn't paid under those circumstances. And previously I'd said that I don't think a judge is going to look very happily on a situation where a landlord's trying to cheat on taxes and so didn't take money, and now the tenant is getting evicted. So if you've got a landlord who's in that situation, you might want to just have them get straight with their taxes. That would seem to be the right thing to do.
And what kind of timeline are we talking about, Jillian and Lori, for funds from application to getting paid?
So for example, for Maui Economic Opportunity, they can cut a check usually 3 business days.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Jillian?
Then your tenants should apply with Lori because so we are expecting a very high volume. We've already had a little under 3,000 apps, but we have given ourselves about a 10 business day to go through everything and send out payments. So again, I'm not saying it's, I want to be strict on it, but going through 2,000 plus applications takes a while.
I imagine so. At this point, David, Tracey, Dan, Judge, Jillian, Lori, do you have anything more to share given all the questions we've had?
Rita, I just wanted to make a comment about some of the discussion. David brought up a really important point that as a landlord or property manager, you may not know what your tenant's going through, even though they've been making payments or trying to make payments, and they may not be aware of all these opportunities. So, and it may be difficult to have that conversation. So again, why mediation could be helpful, because a mediator will meet with each party privately as well as together. So a tenant may not want to disclose their situation to their landlord, but it could be beneficial in a private confidential setting for the mediator to get a really good sense of their situation and why applying for these funds is valuable. And also because of some of the intricate parts of our discussion that we just had, if it's overwhelming for a tenant to have to go piece these things together, again, why participating in a mediation process where the mediator can ask the right questions and bring out these possibilities so it's not so overwhelming, I think, again. And I wanted to share the phone number of Maui Mediation Services. It's 244-5744. And their website is Maui Mediation, all spelled out, .org, maumediation.org.
And just so you guys know, we're recording this, and Mercy and I will put together a list of links and phone numbers and contact information and send that out to you guys. Question is, how does a tenant who isn't filing taxes show proof of income or loss of income? David, Dan, you want to try, or any? Jillian, want to answer that question?
I think that's really a Jillian question.
Okay.
Right, so
Jillian.
for us, we are looking at the current income. So if they don't have any current income, theirs is 0. But if they do have income, like an unemployment benefits letter, statement, pay stubs if they're working, but maybe it's just part-time hours now. So anything that shows income would be provided. But again, if they're receiving nothing, it'll just be 0.
What about a scenario, which I know of, they have been draining their savings and they both were furloughed and lost their jobs back in March? Can they apply? But if they apply, the monies would go directly to the landlord. Is there any kind of credit that can be established for the following months ahead?
So the payment would be a lump sum payment. So say they've been draining their savings, but September, they're like, nope, I'm not going to pay. They can apply for this assistance and then receive September, October, November.
So there's no back payment?
Technically not yet.
Okay.
Again, though, we can go back to August right now. But until phase 2 is released, we cannot touch March through July.
So they would have to stop paying now and then apply and then go through that process for September, October, November, December, for the next 4 months or so.
Yeah, and reminder, it is only a 3-month lump sum, though. They're going to have to recertify
right.
outside of that.
Okay. Question is, so if tenants are current, have paid for August and September, they can't get those 2 months back, correct? Correct. It would just be for helping moving forward. Sorry, yeah, we just answered that. And then another question is, can a landlord evict a tenant that owns another home that they can live in? Jill, I'm not sure about that. Can a landlord evict a tenant that owns another home. They can
Well,
live
I mean, if I can address that,
Yeah, please.
the ownership of another home doesn't really fall into the equation much. So yes, you can, if they have violated a rule. If they haven't paid you rent, then there's a bunch of moratoriums that stop you. So the fact that they own another home doesn't really change much.
Okay. Dan, you have anything to share? Judge, if you're on, you can share.
Rita, I had sort of like two little just comments, just sort of observations that we've seen. At Legal Aid, we obviously deal with a lot of clients who are struggling with money, and I know there's tenants out there who have taken advantage of the no rent. But generally speaking, even our clients who don't have much money really want to pay their bills, and they particularly want to pay their rent, because taking advantage of a few months of free rent might feel good, but they also realize they have to deal with housing after this is over. So, I understand there's a sentiment that people might be just taking advantage of the system, but even in our experience, people really do want to, and there are going to be people who take advantage, but they really are trying to pay their bills. And then the other thing I want to point out, and we see this, is that, as you can see from this discussion, all of these moratoriums and these proclamations are very complicated, and what you can do and what you can't do. And our advice when we get a landlord who calls with one of those really intricate questions is that they get some good advice from an attorney who practices landlord-tenant law. Because you don't necessarily want to ask your friend who does your wills and estates to help you on this, because there's so many little nuances going on here that to keep up with it. Very few people are keeping up with it, even in the business, and that our advice is that responsible landlords who really want to know what's going on, just get some good legal advice. That's just kind of an observation we've had in general. So that's all I wanted to add.
Thank you. A question, Chris has bottom line, the courts are closed, cases scheduled for last March and now pushed to next March optimistically. We need to help each other. Sorry, I thought there was a question. Dan McDonald, what happens to a tenant that has applied for unemployment or PUA benefits and that application is still pending from the state?
Let me answer that, Rita. This is Lori.
Yes,
so I think for somebody who is in that situation and they've been waiting weeks or months for unemployment decision and benefit, that they're probably in really a sad situation right now. I think have them go to MEO, look at the array of assistance that's necessary. So for some people, it may be assistance with rent or assistance with utilities or with car insurance. Figure that out, let them help them with the budgeting process, get hooked up with agencies that can provide some food to supplement a budget, make sure they apply for food stamps, any other entitlement benefits to which they're eligible, and kind of create a financial plan to keep that family floating until the unemployment benefits are finally processed.
Jillian, do you want to restate what you put in the chat box for everyone?
Sure. So my apologies. The RR-HAP program is $1,500 maximum per household, and that's for the overall program. So if their rent is $1,800 and they get paid $1,500, they cannot get an additional $300 from RR-HAP program. They have to go through another COVID-19 program, which is now, I guess, the county programs.
So would you guys recommend then for all of us who are listening to first go to MEO and then Family Life Services first and then to the Catholic Charities next? Lori, you're saying no? Or all?
I think Catholic Charities can, I want people to apply for the Catholic Charities funding because I don't want any of that money to lapse. It's really important that those CARE Act funds be spent because there's a timeliness that's attached to it. So we want to make sure that the money appropriated can be spent before it lapses. We don't want to return any of that money to the feds. Some of the money that I talked about, the rental assistance program at at those 4 agencies. Those are county funds. Those funds are not going to lapse until next June 30th. So what we want to do is we want to really strategize and use the county and the state funds that will lapse next year in June. You want to use those secondary, use the funds that are going to lapse more quickly first, and then seek secondary assistance through the other county funds. And somebody who comes to one of those agencies is not going to know that, but don't discourage them from applying for the Catholic Charities funding. We can use the county funding and some of the other stuff to supplement that, but get that assistance, spend that money down before the deadline, and then we can piece together plans for these families that are going to carry them, because they're going to have needs way beyond December. Most families are going to have needs way beyond December. So working with the agencies, having conversations with people who can help them sort of manage and navigate the multiple resources is a good thing. And my guess is most of the families that you guys see or your property managers see are going to need that support, you know, into the beginning of the new year. So it's a good connection to make, be encouraging, you know, help them deal with the frustration, and just say, you know, please follow through with this. This is a good source of assistance for you.
And to restate the Jillian, the Catholic Charities, the deadline is December 12th, correct?
15th.
To apply? The 15th. So Diane, it's the 15th because I can't cut any checks past the 28th, I believe. With that, you guys, we're gonna just ask each one of you just to finalize, give 1 or 2 sentences that we want to share. So I'm going to ask Judge one more time, Joe, if you're online, if you want to share anything, your last remaining thoughts.
I'm still online, but I don't know if you can hear me. So
Sadly, no.
I don't think you can hear me.
No, but we still appreciate your presence today. We're sorry. David Chee, thank you, evictions attorney. What's your last remaining thoughts, please? Oh, he had to leave, actually. He had an appointment. Tracey from the Mediation Center.
My last comments are, if you aren't able to engage in a conversation with the tenant, to really reach out to Maui Mediation Services. And even if you have a good relationship, remember the mediator can ask some of the questions and get some of the information out to help you both create a more durable agreement that's going to help move through not the next few months, but also in the future.
Thank you, Tracey. Dan, what are your remaining thoughts or last thoughts? Is he on still? Jillian?
I want to say thank you, everybody, for having me. And again, what Lori said, if they apply, we also have an online application. So if you go to the highhousinghelp.com that I posted in the chat, you'll be directed to, I think it's also AUW and our pages. AUW right now has a hard copy app, but we also have a online app up. So folks can just apply basically online.
And what is that? What is that web address again, please?
hihousinghelp.com.
That's right. Thank
and,
you.
They can also upload their documents in the application form as well.
Oh, great. Perfect.
So
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, Lori, Maui County, any last words?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Judge Cardoza, for the connections with us. No, I'll leave my email address here in your little chat box. So if anybody has any particular questions, county resources, I'll be happy to help you and direct you. I think, you know, like I said earlier, we're seeing lots of people in our community that are hurting, that are very worried. It's fragile right now, I think is a good way to put it. And so we want to make sure that if possible, we can help take care of those people, fortify them until this thing passes, and be able to meet those needs and rally the community to help people. And I think you guys are a big part of that, keeping people housed, because we don't want thousands and thousands of people running around in the street without housing. So thanks very much for what you guys do. It's very important for our community.
Thank you. And on behalf of Fidelity, Mercy Palmer and I, thank you for joining us for Fidelity Maui Connects. We do our best to connect you guys and educate you guys. And Janie Vance, you're so funny. And we will send out the recording along with information. So with that, you guys take care. Thank you, and think about Fidelity on your next one. Okay, thanks all.
Bye.
Bye.